All right, now to the still reverberating shockwaves, easy for me to say, from yesterday's arrests and charges that a sitting state senator tried to buy his way onto the New York City mayoral race ticket. Andrew, let's recap what we know to this point.
Well, Rich, let's start with the man in the middle of it all, Democratic State Senator Malcolm Smith. Smith accused of working a series of bribes, apparently caught on tape and by an undercover FBI agent, trying to buy his way onto the Republican ballot for mayor. The other big name, Queens City Councilman Dan Halloran, who allegedly, in exchange for $20,000 in payments from Smith, agreed to ease Smith's name past some borough GOP power brokers to get him on the ballot. In exchange, Halloran, who was reportedly having trouble paying his bills, was to become deputy police commissioner under a Mayor Smith, or at least he hoped. A pair of borough Republican leaders were either on board with the scheme or at least had taken some cash from Smith, according to the charges. Bronx Republican GOP Chairman Jay Savino and Queens GOP Vice Chair Vincent Tabone, each, according to the complaint, had received $40 grand from Smith and were expecting to receive another $40 grand. Tabone's involvement could yet impact the actual Republicans actually in the race for mayor. He is the in-house attorney for candidate John Katzimatidis and had worked for the Gracie's owner for 5 years, or at least he did until yesterday, though two of the suspects in the case had reportedly backed another Republican mayoral candidate, Joe Lota. As we say in the soap opera business, Rich, stay tuned.
Unbelievable. All right, let's bring in our next guest joining us now, Republican State Assemblywoman representing portions of both Staten Island and Brooklyn, Nicole Malliotakis. Assemblywoman, thank you for joining us. It seems every session we add a different name to the list here, or in this case, names. You're a state Republican and a city one at that. What do you do? I mean, you got two party chiefs from two boroughs here who are trying to get, for all intents and purposes, a Democrat on, and it depended, at least if you believe the allegations, on the size of the envelope they got. How much of a blow is this, not just for New York politics, but particularly Republicans?
Well, you know, this is certainly disenchanting. It seems that year after year we're hearing of these scandals both in New York City and New York State up in Albany. And it's not a Republican thing, it's not a Democratic thing. We have people who are bad apples in both parties, and I think this really presents an opportunity for us to clean house. There are people that should not be in our party that we would like to replace, and this is the opportunity to do so. They've certainly showed that they don't share the ideals of the Republican Party, and so now it's time to replace them with people who really care about the interests of the Republican Party and are not going to be, you know, taking money from a Democrat to put them on the ballot line. It's just exactly why the people have lost trust in government.
One Republican insider connoted this to a nuclear bomb being blown up within the state GOP. You think that's a fair assessment? Is it that bad?
I think this is certainly a blow to the Republican Party, but it's certainly not something that we can't overcome. And in fact, I'm sure we'll come back even stronger because, you know, we had bad apples in this party that are obviously not doing the right thing. And I think that now that we're going to be able to clean house, replace those people, and move forward in an even stronger way.
All right. Well, my question is it these bad actors we're talking about, or is it the process? I've heard some say, you know what? Go back a few years, and while no one has any hint of allegation, Mayor Bloomberg, then candidate Bloomberg, he made some nice contributions. He got on the party lines too. Is it just the way the system works, and these guys were outright crooks allegedly, or is it the system itself?
I think it's a little bit of a combination of both. Look, I was very disheartened to hear one of those individuals say that all politicians in New York City are like that. Well, I could tell you, as someone, I've only been in office for 3 years, but there are many of us who really got into politics, got into government for the right reasons. We wanted to make a difference. We wanted to do good things for our community. And so I find that to be really disheartening, and certainly I even find it to be insulting that they would say that all New York City politicians are like this. I could tell you firsthand that we're not, and that I have good people that I work with on a regular basis that really have gotten into government for the right reasons. I do think there are problems with the process. I do think there are problems with certain individuals. What it really comes down to is the individual that you're electing. Are they a good person? Will they be elected to do the right thing? Are they honorable? Are they moral? And are they going to abide by the laws and the Constitution that they put their hands on the Bible and pledge to do?
Okay, but here's the rub. If I asked you last week, what do you think of Savino and Halloran and Tabone, would you have said they're good and honorable people? I mean, obviously, people within the boroughs of Queens and the Bronx, and certainly the people who elected Mr. Halloran all thought those three guys were legit characters. I wonder, would you have counted yourselves among them last week?
Well, I think, you know, we don't want to paint with a broad brush here. We don't want to say that everyone in New York City is a crook and every politician is in it for money or wrong reasons. I mean, we have faith. We've built faith back into the government over the last couple of years, and I think with the Coleman administration coming in, a lot of people who are really serious about reform who came in, we made a lot of changes. Are there still more changes we need to make? Absolutely. Do we toughen the ethics laws enough? Absolutely not. And you know what? If Malcolm Smith does end up being convicted and going to jail, he's still going to sit in jail and collect his taxpayer-funded pension. Which is wrong. And that's the type of thing that we still need to correct as we go along. But do we make progress? Yes. But again, it's going to come down to the individual. There are going to be bad apples in every industry, whether it be you know, public sector, private sector. There's always going to be people who do the wrong thing and ruin it for the entire institution.
Assemblywoman, thank you very much. I appreciate a few minutes.
Thank you.
Okay. You know, one thing I was trying to get at there was, you know, we got to look for the good people. They obviously thought Mr. Halloran was a good guy. And they thought before in the Pedro Espada, I don't know how anyone did, but they thought he was a good guy. We can go down the list here, and there's a legion to go through. But the idea, first of all, these clowns were caught when they were in, there was another investigation going on. They happened to stumble across these guys. The idea that, hey, I'll just buy my way on the ballots. And he was halfway there, it seems. What's the most jarring thing about this story? That they tried it in the first place, or that this seems to be a practical path for these guys to actually get elected?
I was just stunned hearing what the prosecutor, when he came out with the indictment, hearing about how absolutely brazen they were, patting down an FBI agent unbeknownst to them. The language
and missing the wire.
The language that they used, which sounded like a bad, you know, a bad B movie, talking about politicians and politics as this is how it always is. I mean, and the idea that Smith actually thought he had a chance in heck, and Halloran thought he had a chance in heck to win the election. I don't know if Smith really thought that, but Halloran seems to have thought he could possibly be deputy police commissioner. It is just outrageous. So, you know, across the board it's outrageous, but the most stunning thing about this is that the sheer amount of people it involves and the scope from upstate to downstate, and the fact that the last 7 years we've had 29 people in New York State politics, electeds, who have been indicted and found, you know, guilty, or at least been indicted for this type of corruption. It's outrageous.
You've written about this, I mean, covering this. If I stop 50 people and say, you ever heard of the Working Families Party or the Independence Line, half of them would be like, I don't even know what you're talking about. The other one would be, I don't know. It's so, I know this is inside baseball, but there's some shadiness to how this works and who gets on what ballot line and who knows who to ask and who knows, you know, who to I think it's the process as much as the gang who couldn't shoot straight, these idiots caught on tape here, right?
Well, it's two things. Yes, I think it is the process. It's very archaic. I think that the ways to get on the ballot, the amount of signatures you have to get, the fact that you have to pay to get those signatures on the street. I mean, there's so much money involved. It's so many steps of the process just to get on the ballot, not even to actually run a full campaign. So I think there is a pay-to-play aspect here, no question about it. But I think something that I often talk about, and I know you think about as well, we need to professionalize the state legislature. It's a part-time job.
Yeah.
And as bad as Congress, as we think of Congress, we don't hear about this as often as we're hearing about it in state legislatures, because it's a part-time job. And relatively speaking, they don't get paid a lot of money. But no one wants to come out and advocate for them getting a pay raise right now, and that's part of the problem.
And you hit it because even the ones who aren't breaking the law, by definition, half of them are attorneys, okay? The number's probably even higher. Think about who your clients are going to be. Right. Who's going to come hire you when you have a job 4 days a week? You're being hired at a firm because you're going to bring in clients that want to be able to put their business or their cases before the state so that they can have access to contracts or whatever. Now, some can do it legally, but at the end of the day, how are we better served as an electorate for? I ask these guys all the time, and nobody wants to really get into it, but at the end of the day, I mean, Richard Brodsky's here. Richard Brodsky, I believe, is pure as the driven snow when it comes to the right and wrong, when it comes to politics. But he can't give me a good reason why somebody should still be able to have a client who wants to get their business before the state and be able to come to them and retain them. that seems to be, by definition, Andrew, an inherent conflict of interest.
It should be, and I'm sure Brodsky would say, but that's why you have to find the right people who can keep that demarcation, who can keep those two halves separate from each other and not let one influence the other. But by definition, it almost has to a certain degree. And this, the Assemblywoman was right. This is what turns people off to politics the whole way through. It's money in politics at every level,
and
because
they all get tarred with the same.
It's either the absolute corruption that we're seeing, or the accusations are in this case, or shades of corruption in perhaps what Bloomberg did, or just the money that's going around with lobbying. It taints the process.
Let's bring in Dominic right now, who's in Lower Manhattan at the courthouse. We're going to be talking in a little bit about what happened at the stop and frisk trial today. But Dominic, when you read through the indictment, I think Jeannie hit it on the head. It's like a bad B movie, what some of these guys were saying. Were you more stunned by the sheer stupidity of these guys, or just that, my God, it's come to this? That, all right, let's find the price. We'll basically go to each borough here and get on the ticket. And as I said, at least we know of two of them, they seem to be halfway home, you know? I mean, it's unbelievable that they thought they could pull it off, and in many ways, maybe they could have if they weren't caught.
They could have pulled it off, Richard. Guess what? It happens quite a bit in New York State. I am surprised at the stupidity of what they did. This is the way it normally goes, and it's perfectly legal. I've listened to the entire panel, and I agree with all of the comments that's been made by the four of you. But the way it normally goes is it's called get out the vote money, number one, to the state parties, or it's called housekeeping money. But there are ways to go about this legally, and it achieves the same goal. Now, of course, the money doesn't go directly into the party chairman's pockets, but there are ways that you can legally do this. So the process must change. Your original point, Richard, and you got to get the money out of this. It has to change.
Well, do me a favor,
we're going to keep going down this road over and over.
Dominic, remind me, if you remember, 12 years ago, when then candidate Bloomberg wanted to run for mayor, but people didn't even know if he was a Democrat, whatever he was, and he thought his quickest path was if he ran the Republican line. What did he do in short order to get all the borough, party chairs to put him right on the line or lines?
Well, first of all, you let the lawyers handle it. You remove yourself, and that's exactly what Bloomberg did. It amounts to the same thing. He writes a big check. The money goes to the state party or to the local parties, and presto, somehow, some way, the lifelong Democrat is on the Republican ballot. The same identical thing. But Bloomberg didn't promise to return something for them in terms of this transportation project in Spring Valley. So that's why I'm surprised at the stupidity. If they just didn't discuss that part and didn't make these direct cash payments, they could have been fine doing the same exact thing, but in a legal way.
And that's, I think, the scariest part of this story. They could have done what they actually set out to do if they did it without the quid pro quos, but still, as you said, with the dollars and cents.
So
I mean, that's how perverse the process is.
What's the difference? That it was Bloomberg's money as opposed to
well, no,
Smith?
Think about how he did it. He gave, basically, they got payments here under the table from Rockland under the promise here that they'll do the road project here, and it'd be a quid pro quo. You give me money, I'll get you your project through, and therefore I got the cash to pay the guys off.
Smith was a multimillionaire.
Different story. And that's the scariest thing I think about this whole thing to this point. All right, we take a quick break. When we come back, we'll head back to our buddy Dominic, who's in Lower Manhattan. Stop and frisk. We've been covering this story since get-go. Well, developments today, the guy who has the biggest command in the numbers, the sheer numbers about who's getting stopped, where, and why, he was on the stand today, had a lot to say. We'll have more on that after this.